On today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast, we're breaking down the Ringer's top 100 NBA players. Did Cade Cunningham make the top 10? And we'll talk about whether he should be top 10 in today's episode, Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, you know what? Let's go ahead and restart the intro. I forgot to give you guys the sound in the back. What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Ku Khahil. That sounds a lot better. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Truly appreciate all of you guys' support. Make sure you guys head to the description down below. I just dropped Jay and Ivy's season review over on the SUBSTACK film breakdown, deep into the numbers. It was my longest review, longest article I've written over there yet. I think you guys would really enjoy it, so make sure you guys go check that out. Also, head over to the Playback Room, subscribe over there if you want to tag along for some of these finals games. Can't believe the Pacers won game one, but this is a Pistons podcast, so we'll get into it. We have friend of the podcast, Matt Griffin, joining us. You can follow him over on Twitter at Griff1on1. We're going to talk about the Ringer's top 100 list. We'll discuss whether the Pistons should have multiple guys in the top 100 list, and then also later on the podcast, we'll discuss what's the options for the Pistons at pick 37 in the NBA draft. But let's go ahead and get into it. Cade Cunningham. Matt, before we get into where Cade actually was ranked, where do you feel like is a fair place to have? Where do you think is like a fair section? Like you can throw out
a range.
Range, or a respectable range where if someone has him in that range, you're like, okay, I can respect that.
I think it's tough because of how people are going to talk about some of the older players, right? Like, are you if you're making a list, are you thinking of next year now, right? Are we kind of trying to project a little bit? Are we projecting that LeBron might be 10, 15% worse than the last time we saw him, that Kevin Durant might continue to slowly lose some of his value? I don't know. I think having him in the top 20 is like fair. Like if you just want to say, hey, like I'm not gonna be too upset if you have him in the top 20. I think that's valid. I think he could be much higher than that. Like I think that there's an argument for him to, like, I don't know, float around the 10 range, 10, 11, 12. There's a lot of good players in the league, but I think 10 to 20 feels like a fine place.
Yeah, I think top 20 is, if you have him top 20, I can respect it. I wouldn't get too mad at it. If he's lower than 20, I'm probably going to start screaming or start arguing with you for real. But top 20, I can't be too mad at it. I think it's probably a respectable place to have him. So now we'll tell you where the Ringer actually had him. So they had him right next to Evan Mobley, which again, when me and Matt did our All-NBA teams, I mentioned this, that wherever Mobley was, I was just going to put Cade with them. I feel like they both should be right next to each other, and so I can respect this. In this top 100, they have Evan Mobley 17 and Cade Cunningham 16th. So I know there are already some Pistons fans that were upset that he was not put into the top 10. Before we get into whether he should be in the top 10, I'm going to tell you guys the players that were ranked ahead of Cade for him to be 16. And some of these players I don't think anyone's going to really argue about. But obviously, we'll start at the top. Obviously, Jokic, SGA, that's 2. Number 3 is Giannis. 4 is Luka. 5 is Steph. 6 is Anthony Edwards. 7 is Tyrese. 8 is Donovan Mitchell. 9 is Jalen Brunson. 10 is Jason Tatum. 11 is Victor Wembanyama. 12 is LeBron James. 13 is Anthony Davis. 14 is Kevin Durant. And 15 is Kawhi Leonard. And then you got 16, Cade Cunningham. So, Matt, we talked about how if you had him just top 20, you can respect it. Are there any names that, and we can argue back and forth if we want to get to whether he should be top 10, but is there any names that you can just straight up say that are ahead of him in this list that you're like, yeah, he should be ahead of that guy? Like without thinking really, without a real argument, you can say he should be ahead of that guy. Is there anyone?
I think if you're taking everything into account, I think it's tough to make an argument that Kawhi Leonard, I shouldn't say tough to make an argument. The argument is easy, but I would have a hard time putting Kawhi Leonard that high. All things considered.
Yeah, I think Kawhi is the one that I look at. I'm like, and I'm one of those people that really respect Kawhi and think that when he's healthy, He can be one of the best players. Like he is still when he's healthy, I think he can peak there. And at the end of this season, the last 30, 40 games, it felt like he was getting there again. But because of the injury history, because it is inconsistent and it is kind of one of those when he is healthy, I don't see how you can really put him above Cade when Cade is consistent and you're not really having to worry about the same concerns that you have with Kawhi. So I'd have him over Kawhi, no doubt. Now you start getting to the guys that maybe could go either way. So I'll let you start off. Would you have him 16 or would you have him any higher?
I'd have him a little bit higher than that personally. I think it's tough. I think when I kind of rank players out, I think the top of the tippity top of the list you can kind of sort out rather easily for me to a degree, as far as hey, I just value what Giannis does a little bit more than what Luka does, for example, or Jokic a little bit more than Shea. But when you start getting into that range here, more at the bottom, where I feel like a lot of it is context driven. I think that there are teams that Cade is better than Anthony Edwards for, but there are also team contexts where I think Anthony Edwards is better than Cade, just for example. And I think that that's kind of true of all the guards that are in that range. I'd say past Steph. And Halliburton's my guy. I'm the only Pistons fan that likes him. But I've had Halliburton in the top 10 since before the playoffs. So obviously, after the run that he's put together, he's pretty solidified up where Steph is at for me. But then past that, for me, Anthony Edwards, Donovan Mitchell, Brunson. I'm missing a guy around there that's a guard. I feel like maybe I'm not. I don't know. But those three guys or those four guys are kind of the guards that I think are lumped together to an extent for me. I would probably just take Cade's size and overall versatility over those dudes. I do think that there's more kind of paths you can go down as far as building a team around a guy like Cade than there are around those other guards. And then it's it's so hard to compare a guy like Cade to Evan Mobley or Anthony Davis, just because the roles are so different. And I am not a believer of I think to some people being a number one option just takes all the precedent in the world. That is not me. I really don't feel that way. So I think in Anthony Davis and Evan Mobley, I feel even it feels more theoretical because his team asked him to do so little. But even a Chet, it's probably kind of just given how valuable what he brings to the table. And again, all the things that having a five who can do what he does open up, you start to kind of get into that range where you're comparing guys who are tasked with leading a whole offense to guys who are tasked with anchoring a defense and at least being additive on offense. I don't know. It's tough. But I'd have Cade. I think Cade and Ant are really comparable as far as their value to a team. I think Cade and Mitchell are comparable. I think Cade and Brunson are comparable. If I had to rank them, I'd go Brunson, Cade, Ant, Mitchell, I think.
Yeah, I think I'd have Cade maybe just a little bit higher here. I said at the end of the season when he made All-NBA third team that I felt like he was around the 12-ish best player in the NBA. That's probably what I would have him at. I might have him better than Kawhi here. And it goes back to, like you said, with the old guys. If you say Cade's better than Kevin Durant, if you say Cade's better than LeBron, it's what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? But it's you've talked about this a lot with me that LeBron, his on-off was not very good this past year for the Lakers. And he obviously has shown slippage. KD, while he still remains an electric shooter and just absurdly great pull-up shooter, he doesn't get to the rim as much anymore. And he's not nearly the same defender that he once was. And we just saw his team fail to even make the play-in. So I think I would have him above KD. I think I would have him above LeBron. And a part of me wants to put him above 82 because of the whole injury thing as well. And I trust Cade to – and there's an argument that will come up later as we get to whether Pistons –
Cade's missed a lot of time, too, is my problem with just being the injury guy. And we're being objective about it. Anthony Davis played a long season just a season ago. Not this past season with the Mavericks, but his last full season with the Lakers, he played plenty of games.
But I'll say the next argument for Cade over them would be something that will come up in just a few minutes, is whether the Pistons should have multiple other top 100 guys. I think Cade was asked to do a lot less than some of these guys, and he was able to take the Pistons and have them, having a season that no one expected him to do, winning a playoff series, or not series, but winning some playoff games with not the greatest team around him. So I would probably have Cade 12 or 13th. But that's only 3 spots off. So I'm not too mad about him being 16th. I'm more okay and happy with the fact that he's getting this type of respect when they're putting him in these kind of discussions. It feels like that Last year, we spent a lot of time talking about, is Cade not getting enough respect as a number one pick? Is team success really holding it to a point where people really just think Cade's not good? And now it feels like a year later, it feels like everyone's kind of just accepted that, yeah, Cade's really freaking good and he's coming, which I think is really cool to see.
Yeah, it is. It also, I think, matters. Obviously, it matters what you value, but how much do you value what you have seen as opposed to kind of like what you theorize players would look like in different, and like how much do you value context? Because obviously Anthony Edwards and Donovan Mitchell have more playoff moments, they have more playoff success than a Cade. Jalen Brunson too, of course. I just like in my heart, I just think Cade, again, like I think that there's more context where he makes more sense than those guys because of his, obviously the size, but just the playmaking in general. I think like you really can't overstate how valuable making other players is. You mentioned LeBron's on-offs, and like the same kind of holds true for an Anthony Edwards. That team was better throughout the regular season when Anthony Edwards was off the floor, and there are plenty of reasons for that. Them having multiple really good bench players, the lineups fluctuating as much as they did. I'm not saying that Ant was bad by any means. I had him all NBA comfortably, but I think of a guy like Cade, and it's like there's no type of player like you put Anthony Edwards next to Rudy Gobert, and the Timberwolves got worse than when Gobert was just out there by himself. There is no world, I feel like, where Cade isn't accentuating a player to where if talent is around him, a guy like Gobert, who does need to be spoon-fed offensively, but is going to carry you to a degree on defense, or you put Cade around a guy like McDaniel, like just kind of any type of player, I feel like Cade is going to bring the best out in them in a way that I'm not sure Edwards or a Mitchell really is. So that's just kind of my rationale for it. I think the more interesting argument is kind of where's this list going to be in a year? Because everything with Cade, we don't know that he's going to come back and shoot. Cade could come back and shoot 40% next season. It wouldn't be the craziest, 40% from three next season. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. Or he could drop off a little bit and it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. Where the turnovers get better, I would assume so. Like there's a lot of things that being a young guard, like you just kind of grow through early on in a career when you are asked to be that guy, and Cade is still within that growth process, as is Ant, of course. So it's hard to project, but I think like it's more fun to project a little bit, is what I would say.
Yeah, and I think a great way to segue into the next segment with what you were talking about, how Cade makes everybody else better. We're going to get into whether the Pistons had any other players in the top 100 and whether they should have multiple guys in the top 100. I'll go ahead and spoil it for you guys. They only had one other guy in the top 100. And we'll tell you guys which player that was coming up. Today's episode is brought to you, guys, by FanDuel. You guys know it. I've told you guys this many, many a times. A few years ago when betting became legal in Michigan, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to try out. I tried out FanDuel, and I've never turned back since. It's super fun to use, super self-explanatory, but obviously, most importantly, super fun to use. And the NBA Finals are in full swing. Again, I can't believe the Pacers won this game. I just don't know how it happens. Every night, it feels like they deliver a highlight-worthy performance, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot from Hallie, or a breakout player or a breakout play like from Andrew Nemhard. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Again, head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. It's another great way to support the podcast. I want to thank you guys for being everydayers and making Locked On Pistons, again, your first listen of every single day. I appreciate all the support. And if you guys want to check out Jay and Ivy's season review, which I just dropped on the Substack over there, we're nearing 500 subs over there. I appreciate all of that support as well. I think you guys would really love the Jay and Ivy season review, along with the Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, and Asar Thompson reviews that we have over there, along with the film breakdowns we had after every single playoff game. So if you haven't already, go to the description down below. Check the Substack out. I think you guys will really love it. But let's go ahead and get into the rest of the top 100 list, Matt. The Pistons only had one other player in the top 100. I know you know who that other player is, but before you knew who that player was, before we spoil it, would you have thought that it was this player? Like if I told you that the Pistons had another player in the top 100, it was only one, would you have guessed that it was this player? Yes or no?
I would have, not because I agree with it, but just because I've seen how the national media kind of talks about the Pistons. So it didn't surprise me a ton when he was the other guy.
Yeah, to be honest, I was shocked they put any other Pistons on here in the top 100, and this player barely got in. He was ranked 97th, and we're talking about Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren was the only other player to make the top 100 list that plays with the Detroit Pistons. He was sandwiched in between Herb Jones, who me and Matt both believe probably should be higher than this, and right below him is Jalen Green at 98, who I don't think should be on this list. And I'm not going to get too crazy into this because I've heard that Jalen Green goes through and sees everything that people say about him and responds.
Well, listen, if Jalen Green sees this, I'm sorry. If there was a top 200 list, Jalen Green would not have made mine.
Look, guys, I was going through, just real quick on Jalen Green, I was going through like all the numbers for Jaden Ivey's season review, and I had to go by like, okay, person that does this X amount of times, at least this amount of times, where do you rank? And every time I did that, I went to the bottom to see like who was at the bottom. I kid you not, in almost every single one of these play types, like pick and roll ball handler, finishing at the rim, all this stuff, Jalen Green was at the very bottom. I was like, there's no way you're at the bottom of so many like play types, dude. It's impossible. But anyways, look at the Jalen Duren. All right, so Matt, you've already kind of hinted at it. You don't agree with Jalen Duren being 97. I do want to give just a quick first sentence that they give for Jalen Duren, which when me and Matt read this, I was like, okay, well, you kind of just like crapped in your own decision to make him top 100, but okay. Their analysis is the first two sentences. There are plenty of holes to poke in Jalen Duren's game. His feet are slow defending pick and rolls. He isn't a threat to score beyond 3 feet of the basket. He's a turnover machine. I was like, okay, well, like, you just like killed him. So like, why'd you put him top 100 if that's what you were going to say about him?
He's bad on one end of the floor, and then on the other end of the floor, he can't score from anywhere, and he throws the ball. Like,
so it's like, what the heck? All right, man. So tell me why you wouldn't have had Jalen Duren top 100. There's a few guys that I actually think should have been in consideration for top 100. We'll get there. I'm going to talk about that. But just tell me why you don't think Jalen Duren shouldn't have been the top 100 guy.
Man, I mean, it's certainly not because of his talent level or even because of the way that he played towards the end of the season. Like, I was really pleased with his performance in the Knicks series. I think, like, the last 30, 40 games of the season, how could you not be really excited about what Jalen Duren showed and the growth that he did show? But that's also, you know, baked into that is the starting point where we were 45, 50 games ago. And I was like, man, I don't think he's a starting center. Like, he's certainly not a starting center right now. I'm starting to get worried where he's going to, you know, kind of end up and how he'll continue to develop. But it's just early. I think by the end of next season, Jalen Duren could probably deserve to be on this list, in my opinion, but we don't have like really a substantial sample size of him playing good basketball. And even the good basketball that he's playing, again, it's good basketball, but it's just like, hey, solid starting center basketball, right? Like, he's a great lob threat. He's one of the best finishers in the league as a 5. I'm happy that he is Cade's pick and roll partner. That absolutely is valuable, and he's a fantastic rebounder. That's awesome. But like, and the passing, I think, is notable too. But it's like, okay, that skill set just kind of puts us at like Daniel Gafford type of level, and being there for his age is incredible. Like, it's a good spot to be in. I don't want that to get lost, but this isn't a top 100 players for their age right now, or projecting the top 100 players. It's top 100 players in the NBA. And I think that there's just kind of some other bigs that I think are better players right now that I'd have to consider better players right now, given a fuller body of work. Like a Lively didn't make the list. I mean, Lively can do a lot of what Duren does on offense, but he's a much better defender already, right? A Jakob Poeltl, who I think is just kind of a steadier presence, and also he can do a lot of like the hub stuff that Jalen Duren does, but he is a better defender. He's not the same lob threat, but again, just kind of a steadier presence. Walker Kessler, what he could do on defense, I think you could argue is more valuable right now than what Duren is, but he's older than Duren. Steven Adams, I mean, what an impact he had for the Rockets, obviously in limited minutes as well, but Nick Claxton's another guy. Like, it's like we're 45 games removed from Jalen Duren not even being the Pistons' best big. So it's tough for me to be like, yeah, he should be top 100. I get why he's there. You know, the double, what he does is good, but I just wouldn't have him that high yet.
So I want to give everyone the idea of who else is around the top 100. Because when you first think top 100, I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, obviously there should be a few Pistons top 100. Like, how are they not at least a top 100 player? I'm going to name like the bottom 12 of this top 100 list, just so you guys can hear the names that are at the bottom of the top 100. Payton Pritchard, did he win six? He did. Did he win six man of the year?
I think he won it, right? I think
yeah.
he did,
Six man of the year: Payne Pritchard, Paul George, Aaron Nesmith, Nikola Vucevic, Dylan Brooks, Mitchell Robinson, Tamani Kamara, who should be way higher. Herb Jones would be higher. I mean, okay, Jalen Green, like we already went through that. But then Jordan Poole and Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is the 100th best player in the NBA on this list. So, and there's a lot of players that you could bring up that should be on this list. So, I'm fine. I'm happy that Duren got onto the list. I think him barely being on the list is probably fair. Is like I get like that's if he is going to be on the list, it definitely would be like back end. But is there another player on the team, Matt, that you would actually? Before we get into that, I do want to say I forgot. I said earlier on that this would make my argument. The fact that the Pistons don't have another player on the top 100, and Matt just presented an argument for why Duren may not even deserve to be on the top 100 right now, basically is saying that Cade's in the top 6. Is there another player in the top 16 that has no other player in the top 100? Like, let's go look at it real quick. Kawhi had James. Kevin Durant has Devin Booker and
Beal.
Bradley Beal. Anthony Davis has Kyrie. LeBron has Luka. Victor
Wemby.
Wembanyama had Vassell.
Right? Oh, Vassell. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Jason Tatum had Jaylen Brown. Pritchard. Brunson had Cat. Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley. Tyrese had Pascal and Nesmith. Edwards had Rudy Gobert. Steph had Draymond and Jimmy Butler. Luka obviously had LeBron. Giannis. I don't think Giannis. Giannis might be the one who didn't have one.
Dame.
Did Giannis? Dame? Oh, yeah, Dame. Giannis had Dame. SGA had Chet. And obviously J-Dub. And Jokic had Aaron Gordon.
Like 3 other guys.
Yeah, so like Cade was the only one in that top. Honestly, you might be able to go top 20. That didn't have really another player that could have been in the top 100. So I think that just speaks to how good Cade is and how much of a weight he had to carry and how much better he made these players around him. Going back to Matt's earlier point about how Cade just makes players around him better in ways that maybe some guards around him don't necessarily do. But obviously, I think the argument would be, I would say Asar probably should crack the back end of this top 100. I think he is basically like Herb Jones is 96th. I think he should be right behind Herb Jones. If he's going to be 96.
Where's men's what, like 40?
Yeah, men's 41st.
Okay. I mean, like, Asar is I guess it kind of is similar to the Duren thing where it's like it just hasn't been a ton of time. Like he missed so many games, was on minutes restriction so many games. Yeah, I don't think there's 100 better basketball players in the NBA or 100 more impactful basketball players in the NBA than Asar. But it's just a little bit of like I think that they just need to see it first. I think that the first update that they do of this list next NBA season, Asar will 1,000% be on it.
Yeah, I agree. And is there another Piston that even has an argument to be on the top 100? Because I was going through, I was like,
I mean, if the barrier is Jalen Green, yeah, there's 4 or 5 of them.
I mean, okay, well, like, come on, like, like the one that came to my mind, I was like, okay,
Tobias.
No, I was gonna say Malik.
I think
Malik was the only other one that I was like maybe, but
I wouldn't put a shooter on. I don't think I would put like a shooter specialist on there after their best season. Like that just kind of always burns you, I think.
Well, like but I was saying that like the bottom 2 season. The bottom 2 is Bradley Beal and Jordan Poole. Like, is Beasley better than those 2 guys? Like,
no.
So like I don't like Tobias had a good season, but is he better? Like, no, he's not. So it's like the Pistons. I don't think the Pistons. They barely had 2. You can make an argument they shouldn't even had 2. I can't really make the argument for anyone else to really be on the list. So, I mean,
if Ivy played a full season, I mean, he's talented enough to have.
He might have cracked the list,
especially if he was floating around 20 points a game, like, and we were in the playoffs. I bet they would have voted for him.
I mean, if Jalen Green's on the list, then like,
yeah, we could say that for everybody though. If Jalen Green's on the list.
Look, I went through this Jalen. Look, if you go on the Jalen Green full timeline, like of the Ringer updates, he's went from 79 to 95 to 88 to 82 to 98.
And the whole time he's been 80 spots too high.
Yeah, like he shouldn't even be on it like to begin with. But okay, so let's play this real quickly before we get to the second round pick they have. If there was a Piston, well, I guess you already answered it. Is Asar who you would bet on if there was a Piston to be on this list like quickly next year? Who would it be?
No doubt, Asar. Oh, I don't know, Asar, Ivy. Who's more like I just think Asar's better, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ivy comes out and he's like clearly their second leading scorer and has a really good start to the season and the shooting leap continues. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on the. I feel like maybe both of them. I feel like there's a good chance both of them are on the list next year.
Yeah, I think Asar will end up on this list next year. I think there's a chance that Duren ends up going up a little bit higher, maybe like around the mid 80s. I think he could be up there.
He'll pass Vooch soon. He better.
Yeah, I think he'll pass Vooch next year. And we'll have to see how Ivy looks coming off this season. How healthy is he? Is he able to develop and get better over this offseason? Especially if he is the second lead scorer on a team that's, I mean, if he's going to be on the second lead scorer on a team that's making the playoffs, he's going to get, some votes to be on this list.
But again, I mean, Jordan Poole, like, is Ivy going to score better than Jordan Poole?
I mean, if he did, it'd be great.
Right. But that's the barrier. But also, Poole doesn't win any games. So, I don't know.
So, who knows?
Very weird.
All right. So, when we come back, what?
We should do a top 100 this offseason. That could be what we
I could never do it. I would leave so many people off and be pissed. I don't envy anyone who does these lists. They're so hard.
Rightfully rank Herb and Tumani.
I'd have Kamara
justice.
damn near top 50. Like, I'd have him really high.
I'd have Herb so high, dude.
All right. So coming up, I want to talk with Matt about the second round pick the Pistons have, pick 37. Matt has done some scouting. He says to me he has a top 40. We'll talk about pick 37 and how viable it even is now. Spoiler alert, it might not be too viable anymore. We'll talk about it coming up. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Check out the description down below for the Substack and for the playback. But let's go ahead and get into this. So Matt, coming out of the season, obviously the Pistons didn't have a first round pick, but they had a pick that was very high in the second round to where people were like, okay, well, one, it could be, basically a first round pick, or two, it wouldn't take much to move back up into the first round. Maybe you can take that pick and attach a few seconds to get up in the late first round. So the Pistons, a lot of people have been talking about what's a good talent in the back end of the first round. There's some of the Pistons could really grab that could impact the team next year. And I saw a lot of people in the community that do draft stuff that I follow were pretty excited about this coming into the offseason. But over the last few weeks, a lot of players have left the draft to go back to college. And now I see a lot of the sentiment now around, really, it feels like what I've seen, people are just not as high on people past 30, like at past 25. It feels like people are just losing value, even late first round. So, Matt, how do you feel? You've said that you have a top 40 right now. Is the 37th pick really just lost its value? Like, how much value has it lost?
I mean, I don't think that you can overstate how much the NIL era, quote unquote, has disrupted the value in the back end of the first round, early second round. So like you said, like last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure there's Michigan fans listening. When Yaxel Lendeborg went back to school, went back to Michigan, that was one of the worst days of the month for me. Just because, as a Sparty fan, that's a brutal pickup for Michigan from my perspective. But there was like a 3-day window where 7 guys that were between 17 and 32 on my board went back. So you can like that moves everybody up that would have been in that range up 7 spots. So now you're losing 7 guys. I mean, all of those dudes, just because they were on my board in that range doesn't mean that they would have went before the Pistons picked in that spot. But
the sentiment you're about to share is a sentiment I've seen literally almost everyone share across the draft community, that like, oh my God, there's so much talent going back there. This background of the first rounds, early second rounds, just losing all of its value.
And that's just in the past couple of weeks, like just in that little window there. Like there's plenty of players who went back who knew that they were going back months ago, right after the college season ended because of the NIL, that would have been in the draft, right? So, like, if NIL didn't exist, this pick would be a lot better. You probably would be getting a significantly more talented player. That nukes, obviously, the value of the pick itself. That nukes your ability to kind of trade with it. Obviously, other teams are well aware that pick 37 has become, I don't want to say useless, obviously, but it's become less valuable. There's going to be less talent on the board. But at the end of the day, you only pick one guy, right? So there's not really a difference between having 8 guys you like and having one guy you like if the one guy you like is the one you would have drafted at the end of the day, because that's the guy that matters to your franchise. So I don't want to say like all hope is lost, or that even, we lost the guy that we were going to pick at 37 because of everybody that went back, though. I think that's probably true. But it's a brutal year to be that pick in particular. And I mean, next year could be similar, but it's tough. It's tough.
All right, so despite that, though, are there any names that you want to throw out to the listeners that you have that you think the Pistons, not just because there are some players that maybe you like that you don't think would be good with the Pistons or would work with the Pistons, whatever. Is there any players, like, give me at least like 2 or 3 players for the listeners to look at that you think, hey, if they're there at 37, this could be a good pick for the Pistons?
Okay, yeah. Here, I'll give one that would be a Locked On Pistons, like a little bit of a special one to you because I think it'd be big for your numbers. And so I'm thinking of all the Pistons content creators when I say this one. But if the Pistons drafted Hanson Yang at pick 37, you'd have a whole new market tuning into every Pistons podcast, talking to us on Twitter, joining the Pistons community. He's one of the best Chinese prospects in a long time. He's really good. Honestly, he lit up the combine. There aren't full games for me to watch of the CBA as far as I could find, but he's cool. He's a fun player. He's Chinese Jokic, and he's very big, and he handles the ball well.
What is he? He's a big. He's a forward. Give us
he's
a
a
little...
5. He's a 5. He's 7'2", 9 foot, or I think he's 7 foot flat, but or 7'1" flat, but 9'2" standing reach. He's huge. Yeah, he's a 5, pure center.
He a shooter, defense. What's up with him?
No shooting, no defense is kind of the idea here. They don't. Well, maybe he'll defend. He's so big, like you can figure it out. But it like a high post guy. He's got a very refined post bag. He can pass really well. He's got touch around the rim. He makes his free throws. So like kind of an old school big is the idea. But he can do a little bit with the ball in his hands. That'd be fun. That would be fun. But in actuality, of players that I think the Pistons like have a chance of drafting in that spot, I think adding shooting like at that spot, like I don't think bringing in another wing who can't shoot is probably good for anybody just because we already have a couple of those guys and there's no way that the 37th pick is going to, take importance over a Ron Hollander and a Sar Thompson. So thinking that way, unless there's a non-shooter who I think is just clearly the most talented guy on the board, which Adu Tiero from Arkansas could be if he's on the board. I think like I've got him in the top 15. And so he could be the best player by 15 spots on my board in that spot. So that's one thing. But Boguja Markovic from Serbia is a 6'11" guy who makes shots and can pass the ball. A little bit of Gallinari in his game, I feel like, and I always liked Gallinari, and he had a great on-off for the Pistons last year, if you remember, before we got rid of him.
I do remember.
Him and, who was the 5?
Muscala.
Mike Muscala. I think like he'd be a good pickup in that spot. Somebody I'd pay attention to, Max Scholga, if you want to guard. He can really shoot it. He can create for himself a little bit off the dribble. He's got like a good deceleration skill. Like he drew a lot of fouls in college. I think that type of thing could move with him to the NBA. Not a great athlete, but he's pretty good. I would like that pick. I don't know. Like you're so swinging for role players in that spot. Hugo Gonzalez is less of a shooter, but he's a good player overseas. I think Cam Jones is the guy who he's an old guard, but really got to the rim, really made this past season at Marquette. He's just kind of like a dominant slashing guard that makes shots. He's good. It's tough. Maxime Reynaud, I don't think he's going to be there, but he's like a stretch 5 that can put it on the floor a little. That'd be good. I think adding a skill set that we kind of don't have is my goal with pick 37.
All right, so last question quickly. Do you think the Pistons will keep their 37th pick after all these players going back to college? Do you think the Pistons will still keep pick 37 and select with it?
I do, just because I don't think like there's going to be a real market trying to trade for picks in that range. Like I think, you think of Trajan Langdon, he just got here. He doesn't have a ton of like his guys yet, right? And pick 37 is pick 37. The vast majority of the time, this guy is not going to be an NBA player for any real amount of time. But I think if Trajan sees an opportunity to just kind of keep on building sort of his vision of the team, he'll probably take that opportunity. I'd have to imagine Trajan Langdon, like most GM, if I were an NBA GM, I would want to draft players. Like that would be exciting for me. That would be kind of like you got to draft good players to build sustainable success. So I think we'll probably keep it. If anything, I would say a trade up is more likely than not picking.
All right, we'll leave it off there. Thank you, Matt, for coming on, man. You guys can find him over on Twitter at Griff1on1. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe on the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Head to the Substack to check out Jay and Ivy's season review I have over there, along with the Cade, Asar, Jalen Duren, and the film breakdowns from each playoff game. If you haven't checked those out already, check that out in the description down below, or join us over at the Playback for some of the finals games actually now. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, Peace out, everybody.